All right, boom, man, we're live. Man, I was just watching Superbad, and dude, I was just thinking, like, how boring was school, dude? Like, in a classroom, just limited technology, hours and hours of life just passing away, truly not learning anything except for like how to be solitary. You know, don't talk to your friends, don't talk unless spoken to, don't get up, don't laugh. Did you have any issues at school?
See, I love school. And I was a bit of a quiet kid, I guess. Kept to myself when I was super young. Didn't have too many friends, and yeah, no. I mean, I liked being able to like lose myself inside of a book. My favorite subject was English. And I also like I did really well in elementary school and I got made fun of a lot for it, but I won like regional speech contests.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Just so I guess I've always been interested in being able to communicate an idea in layman's terms, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it definitely does. And that's like the one of the last things I expected when I see your hockey player, right? There's always these misconceptions. And you know what? We'll put a pin in this real quick. Let's go ahead and introduce you. This is Daniel Carcillo, aka Carbomb. They used to call me Bike Wreck because I skated like I was in a bike wreck. Anyways, dude, thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the back-to-back podcast, I've had Italians on, so I feel obligated, like I should open up a boxing gym or like some kind of pizza parlor. You looking for some part-time work, buddy?
Just so yeah, I mean we can toss up some meatballs. I'll bring the chicken parm. We'll get
Oh
some
yeah,
get some of my
Carbomb's pizza and
grandparents.
cannoli.
There you go. Get some of my grandparents' sauce going. We can do it all, buddy.
Okay, so my cousin wanted me to ask you a weird question. He's a giant fan of yours. He wanted me to ask what kind of pasta is your favorite, and he saw you as like
Uh,
a penny guy.
Penne, yeah, like the
Yeah.
penne rigatones with a spicy arrabbiata. That's the play. Heavy, heavy Parmesan too, for sure.
All right, dude. That's good. Yo, man, first, before we even get started, dude, on behalf of everyone here in the Chicagoland, I just wanted to say thank you for your time here spent playing for the Blackhawks.
Of course.
Hockey is it's physically demanding, dude, and as we come to figure out, like mentally straining as well, right? So thank you for the time you spent as a Blackhawk. The city was indifferent about you before you came here, just because your style of play was hard, rough, aggressive, and you gave us a lot of hell when you were on Philly. But man, when you came here, everyone loved you. When you left, everyone loved you even more. So I just wanted to, on behalf of the Chicagoland, thank you for that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I that theme seemed to follow me around. I was in Pittsburgh's organization, got drafted in '03, made the move to Phoenix for 2.5 years. And then when I came to Philly, I got traded for a guy named Scotty Upshaw, who was like a fucking fan favorite. And so everybody was like, this guy, like we're trading Upshaw for this guy. And then, Paul Holmgren went to bat for me. He's like, just give him fucking 3 games and you're gonna love him. And I think I fought like 7 times in my first 3 or 4 games just to prove myself. But yeah, me and Scotty were like very similar players. And yeah, when I got to Chicago, there were definitely a lot of questions, especially in that first press conference. And I think that they put me beside Andrew Brunette to kind of announce us both so that he could take the brunt of of the inquiries.
Smart.
Yeah. But my time in Chicago, man, was pretty amazing. Being surrounded by leadership like Seabrook, Crawford, Emery, Keith, Jarmelson, Hossa, Taves, Kane. Am I missing any? I mean, yeah, Oduya. Like the list goes on and on. And it was just a room of a bunch of dudes that knew how to take care of themselves and knew how to play their own role, had no ego about it.
That's cool.
And yeah, it was a pretty special 3 to 4 years that I spent there.
Got the Stanley Cup too, huh?
2 of them. Yeah. If you were if you were on video, yeah, you'd see my office, and
Yeah, you just decked out.
I'm taking a video for you here though, so I'll send you this. There's one. They give you like these little mini replica trophies uh, when you win. Or like, so for example, like with the Rangers, we've got a couple. Obviously, we didn't get the cup, but I was lucky enough to have 4 cracks at it in the Stanley Cup Finals, and lost twice, won twice with the Hawks.
Damn, that's cool, man. What a career, dude. What a career.
Yeah, yeah. It's so there was a time in my life when I, and Alan Watts says you're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago, right? So I'm always continually learning and adjusting, and there was a time when I retired in 2015. Steve had just passed away. I was dealing with a lot, just with the NHLPA, et cetera, concussion symptoms, and I was angry, man, really angry at hockey. And so for 4 years, I tried to just do my best to tear it down. And really, when I went to partake in a large mushroom ceremony, that's when everything changed for me from my perspective of, you're creating your own heaven and hell by fighting these people. This organization is $1 billion machine owned by some of the richest people in the world. You're not going to change it. So what you need to do is get out of the negativity and start creating, start getting better, and then create things that can catch the people when they're sick, because that system is not going to change. That was the message that came through on 5.6 grams. And not to mention, obviously, what it did for my different brain regions and brought everything back online. But that's really when I, started to live a happy and fulfilling life. And, I could look back on it now, man, and be grateful for every single fucking fight, 164 of them, every single hit that may have contributed to the symptoms, because now I'm cured, and I've essentially cured myself. And then I can show people, first of all, they knew how bad it was because they saw it.
Yeah.
And
Even in your
now,
pictures, dude, you looked different.
yeah, oh yeah, I was on the brink of death, man. I was on a lot of
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals.
That's another topic of discussion here.
Yeah, we can dive in there for sure. But I was in a really bad way. I was probably 160 pounds. I'd lost about 50 pounds.
Jesus.
And this was going on for, the better part of 4 years, right? It was like, yeah, but all the while being negative, etc., highlighting, I thought I was doing good advocacy, and I was. Don't get me wrong. I think certain things have changed. People are a little bit more aware. Players are more aware, and they might question the doctor a little bit more because, essentially on these teams, Northwestern sponsors the team. They have a doctor
Right.
from Northwestern on the team as the lead medical staff. So it's like, are you really getting the best care that can possibly happen, or is this a liability thing? And so it started to feel more so like a liability thing than the right care. Then Steve passed, and that's really why I just walked away, had to highlight what's wrong, but then again change that shift, make that shift into that's wrong. But luckily, look at what we've done over here. And I'm not the only one like this. We've helped hundreds of vets and athletes over the past 6 years. Been lucky enough to pass this along.
That 5.6 grams, we call that a hero dose.
Oh yeah, buddy. That's
right. That's almost
large
talking to
enough.
God there.
Yeah, it's a large enough dose where you cannot turn it off. And do not go to a concert on that size of a dose, because everything is heightened from, auditory, sensory, so there's very specific settings, as I'm sure that you can do this in. You need to have a guide, somebody that is experienced. And the most important thing is you just need to have an intention. And my intention for that ceremony was I just want my brain back, or show me a sign tomorrow morning that this is working towards getting my brain back, because nothing gets fixed in 5 hours.
Do you know who Dr. Rick Strassman is?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I had him on the podcast, man, and we were talking about what a high dose of psilocybin could do, and the way he explained it was he's like, okay, think about it as like a skiing slope, and throughout
Mm-hmm.
your whole life you've been going down this skiing slope, and so within that slope there's these ingrained paths, right? It's just dug in there deep. It's almost permanent. What psilocybin or LSD does, or a psychedelic does, is it adds fresh powder of snow. So now you can make new connections. You don't have to keep rerunning those same paths. And I thought that was kind of a brilliant way to describe it, because that really resonated for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think Pollan uses the same reference. I don't know who originally said that, but essentially the translation is, a lot of us, I've been through addiction. Okay. I've been through a pharmaceutical addiction to
Me
opiates,
too.
obviously during my
I was on the
career.
same path, man. Yeah.
Right. And I was, close to death a couple times. And, but I realized now that I was numbing and taking synthetic heroin that was prescribed by a doctor, which feels amazing. And there's no way that you're not going to withdraw when you come off of it,
Oh yeah.
because of trauma. Like, and it wasn't my head trauma, it was more like spiritual, of maybe some things that I didn't reconcile with my parents as I was growing up, or the sexual abuse that happened to 12 of us when I was, in my draft year in Sarnia, or a number of different things, and so I was governing my life in a certain way from 19 to 25, and then I got into like meditation, etc. And then, the biggest thing that these psychedelics do for me, if I can't figure something out, then I can go in, these medicines will show you and put it right in front of your face. And there's no way for you to run away from it. You have to work through it. But then as you work through it, it doesn't govern the rest of your life. And so, I've since, obviously tried. I've been almost 9 years clean of opiates now, but I tried going back to it before, after I dealt with the trauma, and it was, I was like, oh, it didn't get me high the same way. It just didn't have the same effect. And I feel like that's because I was able to shift my perspective of my trauma, be grateful for it, be grateful for the human I am today. And it made everything a lot easier.
A lot of times people look to drugs when they're in like a nasty spot, dude. There was these scientists that did this interesting experiment. So they had a rat in a cage, and they had water in one jug, and they had, I think it was cocaine in the other one. And the rat obviously kept going to the cocaine, kept going to the cocaine, and they're like, well, let's expand on this a little bit. What if we made this cage a little bit bigger so the rat could roam around? We'll put some social stuff in there. We'll put more rats in there so it can socialize. We'll put games, we'll put treadmills. And guess what, dude? When they expanded that, and the rat wasn't living in poverty, to say, the rat stopped doing cocaine. It would go for the water. Like, it tried cocaine once, but then would just like find itself interacting with other rats and drinking the water instead of the cocaine. So I think that says a lot about like mental state of people. Like, if you have a shitty job and you have shitty people around you and you have nothing, like you don't know what your worth is, like, dude, you'll find yourself looking for drugs just to fucking escape, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was first in AA, somebody described that to me as like attaching yourself to something that finally feels good, whether it's the heroin, the marijuana, the alcohol. But I mean, at any state, if you're going to abuse anything, and food can be abused, time can be abused, exercise can be abused, anything can be abused. And if that's happening, or you're seeing that in your life, if you can't, first of all, try to figure it out on your own. Breath work works really well. Confiding in a friend, finding a therapist, like meditation, exposing yourself to, cold therapy, high heat sauna, some type of suffering, exercise. All of these things can be used as tools to improve your life. It's not just, oh, well, I need the medicine, or I need the mushroom, or I need the LSD, that I try to use those other tools before, like the mushrooms is a last ditch effort for me now. And even, like I won't stop, because what I do is I test my brain and my blood every 6 months, but I'm constantly doing like an internal review daily and weekly of how I'm operating my life as a husband and a businessman and a friend. And if things are off, these medicines have the ability to reset me. And and usually there's a lesson in there. And I'm just the type of person where, because we were coming off of the ice every shift, you have to analyze every pass, etc. And there's just an amazing attention to detail that you learn through the sport of hockey. I've applied that, been lucky enough to apply that to my life, in business and entrepreneurship, and obviously with the time with my family and my 4 kids.
Yeah, man. I think putting yourself in stressful situations does wonders. Like under supervision, it's like that you're not in danger of dying. Like an ice bath, you can get out whenever you want, but it's still so stressful on you.
Yeah, after 60 seconds,
Yeah,
you don't feel it anymore. So if you can just, pause and breathe deeply. I did a Indian sweat lodge when I was 25, and that was like my first real spiritual experience that I've ever had. And it was at a rehab in Malibu. I was coming off of opiates after 2 surgeries and being overprescribed. That was just the time, back in 05, 06. And really what that taught me was to think about, when you're in these stressful situations, if you're in a high heat sauna, or if you're in a cold tub, if you're on a long run, the best thing to put your mind towards getting out of the pain temporarily would be to make a gratitude list and be grateful. And it's a practice. And honestly, man, up until 2 weeks ago, when I went to Colorado and we did 300 micrograms and we climbed a 12,000-foot mountain in Converse that weren't even tied, and we thought we were all going to die. We could have, but we didn't. Those are the types of things that just really transformed me into, first, I'll never wear Malibis. I'll never call myself a coach or a spiritual life coach or a guru or anything like that. But when you put yourself in those situations and you make it, it really does, when you get grounded again, make you extremely grateful. But I'm a bit of a dark dude, in the sense that I have this thing inside of me that wants to constantly switch back to fighting. I'm just used to it.
Yeah. So you say you check your brain and your blood every 6 months. How do you go about doing that exactly?
So I was in a lot of treatments in stroke rehabilitation centers, concussion centers, where they do diagnostics on the whole human, meaning they check your vestibular system, which is your earlobe fluid, where you feel you are in space. Your ocular system, which is your eye tracking. The eye brain axis is extremely strong, and so if you see people whose eyes are off, they've got some type of cognitive issue right away, which is pretty common for concussion. They obviously do memory tests, and some other, autonomic testing, your heart rate, sitting to standing, etc., and basically package that together with a diagnostic and a QEEG, which reads how the different areas of your brain are communicating, especially in like theta, beta, all of the different regions. And then they make an assessment on which part of the brain is shut down due to trauma. And because we have 6 parts of the brain, misconception is that concussion's on the whole brain. It's not. There's usually one that's affected more than the other. And mine was my lower right cortex. And so we started correlating those symptoms and made a plan accordingly to wake that part of my brain up. And so I continue to do the QEEG, and I continue to do the blood work. And obviously your blood work, pretty common practice. Cortisol levels were before I went to the retreat, 3 times as high. My QEG came back with all types of abnormalities. And so I just want to continue to make sure that as I continue to partake in medicine that has neuro anti-inflammatory benefits, that
Yes.
I want to just ensure that everything's staying healthy.
Was there a hit that you remembered that jarred something loose, or was it like multiple hits over time, or is there one that like started it?
Yeah, so the only reason I know how many times I fought in the NHL is because of the concussion lawsuit that we filed
Yeah.
against the NHL. And it was what was scary is I do not remember the first 5, and they're
Holy
obviously
shit.
documented. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
remember the last 2. Absolutely. And I remember the last 2, I think, because that's when I got punched in the same side of the head, both with the helmet on. So my brain smashed to the right side and the back, which is why I think my lower right cortex was off. And yeah, I just remember the symptoms, man. I was like immediately in that penalty box on my 6th concussion. Couldn't look at the lights. I had to go right to the room. I didn't even serve the penalty. I just left.
Yeah.
And crying uncontrollably. Emotions are hard to manage when you're just kind of coming out of that. And so that one, and then my 7th, I remember my father-in-law was there with a bunch of waste management people in Philly. He works in trucking and long hauling and garbage, and I met everybody after at a welt the size of a tennis ball, and he, to this day, he's still pretty shook by that interaction because
Oh damn.
I was a zombie. I was just
Yeah.
kind of looking right through people. And I couldn't look at my phone after that 7th one for probably close to 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. I couldn't look at a phone or a TV. So light sensitivity was obviously one of my things. And then I started to slur my speech, started to
Ooh,
have
that's a
impulse.
scary one, man.
Yeah, well, that's just, that's early onset dementia, right? It's a
Yeah.
telltale sign. So, and yeah, I had a couple doctors from like the substance abuse program that were like, when I retired, I obviously didn't say anything before, but like, we're really glad you stepped away. I'm like, okay, thanks for giving me a heads up before, guys.
No
But
shit.
again, liability, right?
The liability.
I
Yep.
just don't think that they value liability and not violating that over the human being, which is then valuing money over an individual. So I always questioned this hockey community as to how much they actually care.
It's a business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And one of my missions was to make sure that these guys know it's a business. So then at least you can go in there and drop all the family bullshit and just play it like a business, you know?
It's so crazy, dude, that a business comes before the human being. It just that shit makes me sick, dude.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I struggled with is if a man, especially young men, don't have, number one, we don't have any coming of age ceremonies. We don't have any community, unless that's through work or these different groups of, fantasy football, etc. But that's one thing that I really struggled with, was to find a community, my community, and one of the groups of individuals that I resonate with are high operating individuals that were either SEAL team members or high up in the Army, in the Navy, fighter pilots, and so I've been able to connect with those people on a very high level, intellectual level, work ethic level, attention to detail level, and then also just high operating executives have the exact or very similar mindset from a work ethic standpoint. And so I think it's just all about finding the community that you resonate the most with, and then being a healthy operating individual within that community, and so I think that's really important. And if you don't have purpose, I think you can almost guarantee yourself that you're gonna feel itchy and you might struggle.
Why do you think it was so hard for you to find a community, I guess? Because I feel like that's something I struggle with too, is finding like my people. I don't really resonate too well with a lot of people I notice, and then I'm not as open and kind of
Yeah.
feel like I'm ostracized or I outcast myself. I guess I don't know why.
Well, first of all, who gives a fuck, right? If the community's 2 people or fucking 20, that doesn't matter to me. You know, I have a very, very small circle, and I always have. And I'll do the whole dance. You know, I'll go to the green and I'll be like, "Oh, Jim, how's the weather?" You know, and like I'll have those conversations because I have to, because I have 4 kids under the age of 8. But I won't constantly put myself in those situations because I just
Yes.
don't want to. It's a fucking waste of time.
That's
You know,
interesting, man, because I got a kid that's 6, and I find myself doing the same thing with these like retreats and stuff. Like I'm not really engaged, but I'll do it. I'll do
yeah.
it
Well, but it's for him, right?
for
So
him. Yeah,
we'll,
dude.
yeah. So like, dude, I'll go through, and you're not necessarily suffering, but if my kid wants me to do something with a parent that I don't necessarily jive with, well, I'll just have to, you know, grin and bear it, but also just it's not that bad, right? Like if that's the worst thing I have to do today, it's like fuck,
Yeah,
wake it
dude.
up,
You're
buddy. You
riding
gotta,
like 20-mile bike rides in 200-degree
yeah,
heat. You can
yeah,
handle a fucking conversation for a little
yeah,
bit.
exactly. And you got a pretty good fucking life, right? But it's you know, my mind continually switches back and forth to that sort of thing. And if my mind is more into the negative, that's when I know there's something going on, you know, that I have to fix.
You're
And that
self-aware. You're very self-aware.
yeah. Yeah, and I just have to be. You know, as athletes, if my foot is tight, you know, or my pinky, I'll feel it and I have to get it worked on, you know. So it's the same thing with my spirit, and I'm not religious, but you know, I operate on very simple principles, and also too, I'll preface this with I'm not a fucking angel. I'm not perfect. I fuck up all the time and continually fuck up, you know. And so but I know who I am, you know, and if somebody interprets me challenging them in a business setting as me being mean and they want to talk about their emotions, I'm not interested in hearing it because in business, you don't bring emotion to the table. You bring facts. And if the facts point towards somebody needing a wake-up call and we're in the same business and we have shareholders, well then it's beholden on you and the best thing for the company and for the shareholders to have that tough conversation. So, you know, there's a lot of people that have moved away from that just can't hang and handle it. And that's okay. And I've given them 4 or 5 chances, but you just have to move forward, right? Like if you're just constantly, even if it's a half a step, even if you're crawling, you just please just continue. If anybody's listening to this and you feel stuck, you just move forward and make time for yourself to figure out who you are, and then you'll be able to figure out what you like, the people you like to be around, and then you'll seek that out with the right type of thought process and energy that will also seek you out. You know, you get exactly what you put out in this world. That's what I believe.
So do you believe you've read the book The Secret?
Yeah,
You
yeah, I've
know
read
about
that.
it? So
A
is that
little.
what you believe in?
Nah, I mean that's a little. The secret's
That's a
a
little
little.
too woo woo.
Yeah. See, like I have these thoughts, I have these beliefs, but if you present it to me in a woo woo way, I'll shut down, and I'll just call bullshit. You
So
know.
you'd like to see the facts of shit.
hmm
Yeah.
I'm
You're like a
just simple,
scientist.
man. Well, it's not even that. I have met so many people in my life and I've had so many interactions with different types of people. At the end of the day, there's like only 4 or 5 archetypes of individuals, and we're all living this life governed by our past programming or traumas. And I like to be around people that radically like to look at how they're governing their life on a daily basis. They exercise, they push themselves mentally and physically, they prioritize their family, they are as honest as you can be. And those are the people that I'm attracted to. Um, and I think I'm attracted to those types of people because that's who I am. And I had back in the AA rooms, I had a sponsor come up to me and I'm like, "Hey man, how do I pick somebody? I'm kind of lost." And he's like, "Well, if you see somebody that has what you want, just go up to them and ask them how to get it." And so that's what I do, and my parents always said, like, compare yourself to those that are better, not worse. Always. My mom would say that. And I constantly try to do that.
I think we do a good job of overcomplicating things as humans.
Yeah. I mean, well, we're fucking pretty complex individuals,
We sure
that
are,
can,
but dude, when
yeah.
this one time I took LSD and I was just on the I was on the beach, kind of reminiscing in Florida, and the only thing that kept playing in my fucking head was just
Yeah.
be, and it was such a soothing and comforting. It felt like a giant fucking hug, dude. I'm like, we overcomplicate. How the fuck is a vaccine gonna get politicized? Everything gets politicized. Like, there's too much bullshit in the world when we should just be experiencing and loving and just like enjoy the people you're around. Life could be so simple, but it's not.
Yeah. Somebody sent me today, Russia
Yeah.
threatens the U.S. with nuclear war. It's like, okay, well, I can't do anything about that.
Yeah,
So what?
dude.
I don't even want to fucking read that. I asked him, please don't send me that ever
Mm-hmm.
again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I do not watch the local news.
Neither do
I
I.
do not watch the national news. I
Energy
do
draining.
not. Yeah, I don't watch the capital markets anymore. I tried to play in that game the last 4 years, and it's not for me. I want to live in a world that I have an influence in creating, meaning I can put people where I want them in my life. I can also block people from my life. And I am not a control freak by any means, but I just know what I want, man,
That's perfect.
and
Yep.
yeah, and I try to get it. I don't try to, in business, leave a negotiation feeling like somebody lost. I don't like that. There's lots of people that have said business isn't for you if that's the way you're going to do it. Well, I don't fucking believe that. I believe that there can be a win-win and you can support others, so yeah, there's just, yeah, very, very specific things.
So how do you convey that message to your kid? To like live how you're living, because it's with social media now. It's such a complex. I'm worried for my kid because I can
Mm.
already see like the influence and shit. And I don't know,
Yeah, my
man.
6-year-old daughter asked me the other day about, you know, two men can marry, two women can marry. I've seen this on the TV, and I reiterate that if those people want to do that, that is their prerogative. But if you're living under this roof, we are going to govern ourselves a certain way. And under this roof, you see mommy and daddy. Daddy can't have a baby. Mommy can have the babies, but you need a mom and a dad to have a child. Yes, there's more layers to that argument about artificial insemination and all that other stuff, but there's concepts that I instill in my kids. I don't tell them that one way is right and one way is wrong. You have to respect everybody, but I've got very good friends who are one of my best friends in Chicago is, he's got a partner, and um listen, man, it's pretty fucking simple. Just give people the respect that you want back, and
That's what I say all the goddamn
yeah,
time.
and that's it. But also too, I'm going to protect my fucking kids
Yeah,
from these ideas at fucking 6 years old, at
I
5
know.
years old. Like, these are
Yeah,
very
yeah,
dangerous things that these kids should not be contemplating.
yeah. They
I
shouldn't be
believe
exposed to
very
it at all.
strongly in that.
I
Yeah,
feel very strongly as well. That's
but
why
I mean, dude, this is the world we live in, right? So we can either complain about it or we can put parameters in place, like taking YouTube and TikTok and all that shit off my phone. And if they have it, they're not allowed getting on. and I limit their screen time to an hour a day. It's one of the main reasons we moved to Florida, because we can all be outside. You want to, they're on computers all fucking day in school. So just, they go to church. I grew up Catholic. Would I identify right now as a Catholic? No, but I believe that those principles are important for when you're trying to figure out. You need some sort of foundation to stand on when you're trying to,
Agreed.
and so that's how we do it in this house, and eventually, when these kids get to be 18 and they can pay their own bills and they can make their own way and they want to think differently, all the power to them. I'll still love them. But right now is not the time.
You and I are pretty similar, man. My ex-wife, she's very religious, and I'm kind of like you. I'm not religious, but I think there's good foundation. I think there's good community that you can learn from that. So we
Mm-hmm.
put my kid in a Catholic school, and he loves it there, and he goes to church all the time, and I'll go there to support as well and be there with him. You know, I mean, it's not doing anything negative to me, so shit. Why wouldn't I go?
Yeah.
It's above me.
Yeah, well, and then I mean too, you can say and say and say and say, actions speak louder than words, right? And these are simple things that my mother said on a daily basis, and it's true. Like you've probably noticed, they pick up all your bad habits, but
They do.
luckily they pick up all your good habits. They're sponges. So if anyone's ever thinking about having a child, like, it is by far the greatest gift and is by far the most challenging, but those are the greatest gifts when it's challenging. And everybody snaps and everybody yells and we say things that we wish we could take back, but this is all part of the human experience of growing up, and so they see the way I treat people. They see, that I'll randomly pick up garbage or randomly help somebody if they need help. Or for example, and this is like a formidable memory for Layla, for my 6-year-old daughter. We went on a hike and she was at this farm school, and the teacher, it was muddy, like it should have been called off, but we went anyway. And so everybody was slipping, and I was just, I'm in shape, etc. So I was just helping everybody, and she, like, to this day, Daddy, remember when you helped my teacher and she fell down? And so, like, they see these things and they say please, they say thank you, because I say please and thank you, and I'm respectful, and they'll pick up on that. They'll pick up on everything.
Nothing completes you more than seeing when your little kid, your little offspring does something good, and you kind of just get this warm feeling because you know that you set a good example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's also pretty great when they stand up for themselves if
Yes.
somebody's being a fucking bully,
Yeah.
you know, and and protect other people. And yeah, I mean, it's this life is not, I really don't think it's that difficult. Although, the problem I see today is that we're inundated with how fearful we should be. Um, and so it's again why I limit my time on these screens. And there's a quote that Duncan Trussell said, which I fucking love. He's like, "There's
Love
some
that.
poor idiot standing by a waterfall, not knowing how depressed and anxious he should be because he doesn't have a cell phone." you know and I'm like,
Yeah,
God,
Duncan.
that's so fucking perfect, because the reality is, like, there's only what, 300-400 million people on Instagram, Twitter. Like, that's not the whole world's view. It's just a very loud minority. There's 8 billion people in this world. So just wake it up, you know
I
wake it
lost
up.
my phone while fishing a couple months ago, and I lost it in the lake. And you know, I didn't try to go retrieve it, or I didn't even call my cell phone company to replace it. I'm like, I'm just gonna take this as like I'm leaving for a little bit. Don't fucking contact me. I'm not going on social media. This is just give me 5 days, dude. Those 5 days, I noticed so much more shit in the world than I've ever had. And earlier this year, I wanted to like get a flip phone, and whenever I go out, Like I'll bring my flip phone and leave my smartphone at home just so I can go experience shit. And if I want to take a picture, I could take a picture. But dude, because like back in the when I was young, maybe like 17, 18, those seemed like the golden years of my life. And I was trying to like, well, why? Why? That was before I had a smartphone. And I was just capturing every moment just in my human experience and not bogged down by this constant anxiety that's in my fucking pocket like a cyborg.
Yeah, I was so fucking lucky. I was 10 years old when the internet was introduced. We had
What year were you
pagers,
born?
85.
I'm 88.
Yeah, so you're right
Okay.
there
Yeah.
where, you had a pager, you were ripping, you were still play and record as soon as the DJ stopped talking into, 30 seconds into a really good song to get the song, and we were burning CDs.
Hell yeah, brother.
And yeah, then we had I was always the music guy, for any hockey that we went to. Like, music is an integral part of my life, and I believe that they're the true prophets if you can just listen to the words and take it in. And yeah, I mean, we're growing up in an amazing time in history. It's moving extremely fast, but like I said, we all have the ability to create our own world. And I just don't live in certain worlds that other people live in. And we can even go through like this medical system that we have, and this thing that we constantly get inundated with are these indications of what we are based off of a fucking checklist that a doctor gives you, and you get a scale rating, and then they can prescribe you a medication that is completely unnatural, that was completely made in a lab. Some of them are legal amphetamines, most is like legal heroin,
Yeah.
and we take it, and then it exasperates and brings on other symptoms so that they can pile on more prescriptions. And since, creating a company and raising a lot of money and going through the FDA system, the reason that they are all synthetic medicines, which are inferior to full spectrum, is because I need to create a medication that's within a 0.01% variance for millions of people. And you just cannot do that with natural medicines, and you can't patent natural medicines. So then the pharmaceutical companies can't block other companies out for 20 some odd years and gain all the revenue, right? So this this system that I was playing in is fine because there's different rules to that system, and I get off on learning about different games and then how to play within those rules to get what I want. And we did that exact thing with Wisana and with this program that we created, which was low dose therapy, putting two Schedule 1 substances together, essentially Schedule 1 CBD derived from cannabis, and then psilocybin. Because one of the most impactful things about my recovery journey was definitely the low dose and the chronic use. And we created something and communicated to them, and they were actually kind of amendable to it, which was pretty remarkable. But I think that's the time that we're in right now, where if you look at surveys, for example, of how people want to access psychedelic medicine, there's so many people that are so, awake to, I think only 7% of people want to access it through the synthetic version of getting it from a doctor and going into a clinic.
Yeah.
I think, I think there's 65% of people that want to access it through like a full spectrum. So through like Measure 109 in Oregon or Prop 122 in Colorado. And then, the other percentage is people that just want to own their own consciousness and believe that these grow out of the ground freely. And there's ditchweed, there's mushrooms. It's like, how does a government say that that's illegal? So if you start digging into this, you'll realize very, very, very quickly the reason that these things are illegal, or at least part of it, is because they work.
Yeah,
You know,
dude. If it like, what a bad business plan for a pharmaceutical company if they heal you, right?
yeah.
If they fully heal you, like you just lost out on business. Hell
Mm,
no, you can't fucking heal somebody.
no, no. I mean, but that's the remarkable thing about. So, for example, MDMA for PTSD, Rick Doblin,
Yeah, yeah.
the leader of MAPS. You know, MAPS is a public benefit corporation, but we won't go into that right now. 37 years of developing a medicine through the FDA that had, number one, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, before the war on drugs with Richard Nixon, had amazing efficacy, specifically, for trauma. And so, they're about to submit their NDA, a new drug application, after two successful phase 3 studies for using MDMA for PTSD. And I'll just put the numbers out there. The next best drug to MDMA or these phase 3 trials is Paxil. I believe it was between 7 to 11% successful.
What's
MD,
Paxil? Is that like an antidepressant or something?
yeah, it's just a pharmaceutical that gets prescribed. It's the most widely prescribed PTSD pharmaceutical right now. I think it's the only actually that's approved, but check that. Um, and so MDMA for PTSD works 67% of the
Yeah,
time.
fucking crazy.
Okay. And the reason it does is because it doesn't rely on the drug, right? It is reliant on the individual and their therapist. And there's 92 hours of talk therapy that's associated with this program. And over 12 weeks, there's only 3 administrations of the actual hallucinogen, which is the MDMA. And what MDMA does is it shuts down the amygdala, which is where our fear response to trauma lies. And so you're able to go into the clinic. First of all, you prepare many, many hours before, and then you integrate for many, many hours afterwards. But when you go in, you'll take this medicine. And that's why it's working so well for sexual abuse survivors, trauma specifically that brings on PTSD, veterans. They're able to access this trauma, talk about it without that heightened spike of emotion, and then these traumas do not govern our lives anymore. So it's a curative act, which
Were you
is
able
unheard of.
to try that? Because I know you touched on briefly about the sexual abuse.
Yeah, so I actually went through and shifted my perspective with mushrooms. I I don't feel the need to take a therapeutic dose of MDMA, and I tend to stick to natural medicines, so I don't necessarily, it's not a bad thing. It's just not for
Sure.
me.
Yeah, yeah. What do you feel about like little kids playing contact sports? What's your stance on that? I feel like you'd be
So,
a wonderful person to ask.
yeah, I mean, listen, by now, if you're a parent, you're making a responsible decision for your kid. There's tons of research out there. 3 or more concussions, you're 80% more susceptible to neurodegenerative disease. And so if you want to subject your kid to that at an early age, that's on you. If you're not going to do the research, that's on you. But also, too, we have to understand that, not for football specifically, right? Very marginalized communities, it's kind of their only way out. It's one or the other. And so you just have to, think of it from that perspective. But if you're, I don't see the need to put a child in harm's way repetitively. And sports are already doing this. There's flag now, right? So
Hmm.
they're getting better. Um, and then, if you get old enough and you're good enough and you need to sign a contract, you know, that's your decision, right? And you should now be armed with enough information to make an educated decision if the risk outweighs the reward. And yeah, the risk is, one hit can change everything.
Yeah, my kid's in flag football right now, and I was just doing some research. I typed in when should a kid start tackle football, and Google's actually letting you know that they shouldn't start tackling until they're 14 years old. And I remember back when we were kids, it was like you getting to fucking tackle football right away when you're
Yeah.
like 6 years
4 years
old.
old.
Yeah,
4 years,
dude.
yeah. As
How
soon as you get
crazy is that?
fucking,
Just
yeah.
bouncing your head off shit.
We just didn't know, right? Like nobody was, or I should say, like the fucked up thing is they knew back in 1995, right? They had
Right.
all of
Yeah.
these,
Yep.
like, why did they create all these panels and all of these organizations within the organization that were looking at this research? And then my issue is then they held that information from us, right? So I wasn't able to make an educated decision, and I felt like we should have been told. And then, most of the haters and the bar stools of the world will say, well, you would have signed anyway. I'm like, fuck yeah, I would have, but I still wanted to know. I still feel like I got violated, you know. I still would have made the trade-off most likely, but that information just has to be accessible, you know.
What kind of precautions did they take with you? Like when you got your bell rung, like what did that situation look like? Like did they tell you just like, take a couple days to yourself and get back out there, full speed ahead, take a
Yeah,
test?
so yeah, we had a brain test that was done at the beginning of every year. It was the exact same test. So by year 15, because I'd done 3 training camps prior, you memorize it, and then you
Yeah,
also know that it's the same test that you're going to do when you're hurt. So what
yeah,
do you
so you
do?
fuck
You
it up.
bomb it just
Yeah.
enough to know that it's not going to throw up a red flag, and then you can get back. And the reason you do that, number one, you don't have the information of how risky these hits to the head are. And then number two, you're a professional athlete and you're a fucking savage, and there's an 18-year-old kid sitting right behind you. And if you get out in one game, that kid comes in and plays a good game, plays another, you're done. You're out. So, yeah, there's a bunch of compounding factors. And then essentially, yeah, they'll send you home, and they'll just tell you, come back to the rink when you don't have symptoms. Like that was always the instruction. And so, and then, we're really good at faking it,
Yeah, of course. Because you don't want to lose your goddamn spot to that 18-year-old.
exactly, dude.
Yeah.
So
Damn.
yeah, those were the parameters.
What do you think the reason why athletes get paid so much? I'm trying to like, is it because of the damage it does on your body? Is it because more of the entertainment factor where people are buying tickets? Like, what
No,
is
I
it?
mean,
The
it's
moving aspect. You got to move up, like uplift your life and move to a different state. Like, what's the
because
deal?
it's the hardest thing on earth to do, and there's not many people that are built for it. That's why there's only 750 so hockey players every year. That's why there's only a certain amount of NFL players every year, because most people would quit because the suffering and the risk and the stress is so great. And there's only a select amount of human beings that, for whatever reason, could be the 10,000 hours of training, or it could be the trauma that they've been through, or it could be the circumstances that they grew up in the neighborhoods, etc., that will fucking commit to that wholeheartedly. And yeah, man, there's just not many men or women that will subject themselves to that for a very long time. And then there's certain guys that make it for a year, but have to bow out, and so it's just really hard, man. It's a really difficult thing to do, to commit yourself to every fucking day. For 16 years, I was committed to one thing, which was being the best hockey player I could be. And so that meant anything I ate, sleep, just, who I interacted with, alcohol, all of that was constantly, I was constantly judging myself
That's
as
crazy,
to,
man. You're like literally property of the NHL. Like your body is the
yeah,
NHL's
yeah. I
hockey
mean, in your
venue.
contract, you can't ski, you can't do certain things. And if you do, and you get hurt outside of the rink, they'll throw your contract out. So,
God damn.
but
Do
like,
you?
that's not, it
Yeah.
is what it is. You know what I mean? And so I just think, nobody's talks about it this way, right? And so if nobody's talking about it, then everybody in my purview is going into it blind. Like, these kids are going into it blind. And so now, if more guys are talking about, yeah, there's some great things about it, but there's also some really fucking ugly things. And so just be aware. And your agent ain't going to tell you because he's making 3% rip. He don't give a fuck. Your
Nah.
financial agent, he don't give a fuck because he's making 1% rip, right? And
If
these guys
anything, he's
just
gonna be
want,
forced. He's gonna be pushing you to keep playing,
yeah,
dude.
they just want you to keep fucking playing, you know. But
Paycheck.
you would think that agents, that these financial managers would be more invested in the human being, because the longevity of the human being means
That's a
more
good point.
money for the people around them, for the entourage to keep feeding it. But they don't, you know. And some of them are starting to change. But I think it's beholden on, you know, former athletes to kind of show people the way, right? And that's what's so exciting about some of these medicines too, because they're neuroprotectant. Like CBD, everybody should look this up. Literally, the US government holds the only patent on cannabidiol, also known as CBD. And it's a patent that protects against specifically neurodegeneration. So that
Come
means
on.
it could protect against, you know, aging. That means it protects against um, brain injury. That means it protects against, and in the patent, it's specific. They specifically call out neurodegenerative disease like dementia, Alzheimer's, and ALS and Parkinson's. The U.S. government holds this patent. Okay, and you know, think about the hell that everybody went through to finally get in 2018 the Farm Bill. They filed this patent. I'm looking it up right now because I don't want to misspeak. Um, I think close to back in the, hold on, here it is, cannabinoids, antioxidants as neuroprotectants. When did they file this? 1999.
Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, buddy. Sick, right?
Wow.
So you start like getting into this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what I do like doing is like researching why something is so heavily stigmatized, and then you start uncovering and peeling back the onion, and you're like, oh, well, that makes sense because it fucking works.
I hate that. I fucking hate that, dude.
I love it.
That,
I
that
fucking love
well,
it.
I mean that there's people just like you and me who are in control of what we put in our bodies.
Yeah, but
That's
think about how fucking beautiful that is now. And you have this thing called, you know, the curiosity chamber, and you're literally able to go wake people the fuck up. It's
yeah,
fucking amazing,
you're
you
right.
know, to like
That
have
aspect is cool.
somebody, oh, dude, you see the look on somebody's face after you take them through a ceremony on 5 grams. Like, if I could get addicted to anything, motherfucker, I can get addicted to that.
What's your
It's
what's your schedule
brutal.
look like when you're taking, if you're doing microdoses or if you do like a big hero dose every once in a while?
Yeah, so the hero is it's reliant on myself, of when, again, I'm seeing these exterior things, and I'm either, you know, there's way too much stress or there's a problem I have to solve. It's not all about, you know, business and etc. Or if there's someone I have to help, right? If there's somebody that's constantly reaching out seeking this, then I will help connect them, right? But the microdose is a pretty religious thing that I do on a weekly and monthly basis. I always take 60 days off during the year, and that's usually around December, January. And then I am pretty consistent with a 4 to 5 day on and then a 2 day off every week. So, one thing that everyone should know, if you're taking natural medicine, you can tend to build up a tolerance, especially like CBD. But what I found was interesting, you know, and then obviously you reset, just like coffee, like try it, you know, take the weekend off. You go Monday and you'll probably be sweating. Um, but psilocybin, it seems to have the opposite effect. And I don't know if this is for everybody, but I tend to use less of the medicine now, um, you know, and in a more infrequent basis. Like, I was pretty religious for the first 2 years. It was 5 on, 2 off, and I wasn't straying, and I only took 30 days off. But now I'm just I feel so good that I don't need much, you know.
What sort of things do you notice, dude? Because when I microdose, like everything becomes more vibrant, like colors and like my vision becomes better, dude. It becomes HD, even on just like such a small microdose.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest things that I notice, the number one thing I notice is it allows me to be more in the present moment. So the animal brain, the lizard brain, whatever you want to call it, that's
Hell yeah.
constantly chattering is not silenced, but just not as loud. And I sometimes look there, but most of the time I just look away, you know? So, and then if you're doing that, if you're in the present moment, you know, you're engaged in your kids and you're looking in their eyeballs and you're engaged in their sport and they're happier and then your wife's happier because you're just present. That's all women want. And then well, not all they want, but it's a big thing.
No, you're right.
And then, you know, in business, when I'm at the computer, I am engaged in what I'm doing and I'm taking in all the information. The information you can take in is infinite, as Alan Watts said. Like you can, you know, he laughs at you know, us being able to control these decisions because, you know, you're not controlling the other person on the other side, et cetera. So there's so many things that are out of your control. But if you're in the present moment, you're taking in the most information that you can to make the best educated decision that you can. And I think everything is pretty much an educated guess. And then, yeah, I mean, and then, you know, I also use it like recreationally, right? Like, it's like, if I know I'm going out with a buddy who likes to drink, I'll, you know, pop a couple because it'll help me have less, you know, in a situation where I might not be as strong. So I use it. Yeah, I use it a number of different ways. Use it golfing because, like you just said, it
I
does
do
hone
the
in.
same shit, dude. I do
Yeah,
that.
it
Take
hones
that
in
shit
visual
golfing too.
acuity. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, man, it's a tool that that you know can be used numerous different ways. And you're really the first podcast where I'm starting to talk about this outside of a medical context because I just sold the drug development program to a company and I sold the clinics and I'm kind of a free agent right now.
Nice,
And
dude.
so,
Congratulations.
yeah, it is nice.
Awesome. Good
Yeah,
on
it is.
you.
So, um, so yeah, yeah, and just focusing, you know, on this project called the Healing CREI with my partner Cody Chandra and a bunch of others, and Joe Caltabiano and Tyler Zakovich and David Kivitz and Aaron Robb, just a fucking stellar team of dudes who are going out and trying to address the infrastructure and access problem that you know, when you go to a doctor, they write you a script, you go to Walgreens, you take it at home. Well, this medicine is done in the clinic, in brick and mortars and setting. As I said, like the area that you do this medicine is so important. And so we're building that infrastructure for ketamine clinics and for MDMA clinics and partnering with physicians. So that's really cool. Um, and yeah, and then, you know, I'm trying to build community. I'm trying to find my way, trying to be a little bit more vocal with my crew doses and yeah, there's a few other things that I have going on that I won't discuss because you don't need to tell the world everything. And yeah, man, just focusing on education, awareness, and trying to give back so that I can keep what I have.
You've become immersed in this, and like there's no way you knew that your life would take this route like after the first time you took mushrooms, right? This was over a long period of time because dude, you're fucking knowledgeable as shit. So you like I can see that you're taking this as serious as you took your NHL career. You're just invested completely. It seems like,
Yeah,
right?
so yeah, it saved my life, man. I was extremely suicidal and I wanted to end my life. I wanted to unburden my family from seeing me govern myself the way I was. And
Can we touch
without,
on that for just a little bit about your
yeah,
suicide?
yeah, yeah. So I got to a point. So from 2015 to June of 2019, I spent $500,000 of my own money. I went again to the stroke rehabilitation centers, etc. A good day was 5 to 8 symptoms. A bad day was 15. Dealing
Jesus.
with slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, appetite loss, memory loss, short term and long term, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And I got to a point, after the stroke rehabilitation centers had took all my money. I moved on to, float tanks, hyperbaric chamber, moxa acupuncture, cranial sacral, which helps to decompress the brain, reflexology.
You're trying so fucking hard.
Oh, I tried everything. Yeah, man. And, I documented this. Like I told everybody, I'm like, hey, man, this didn't work for me. And I don't fully believe in that, but go try it, because without hope, then you get to a point where I was in June where I wanted to end my life. And so I had just seen a study, I think a year and a half earlier in 2017 or 18, of a brain under fMRI. And it's that really cool Beckley SciTech where the brain regions are connecting. I'm sure you've seen that image.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
And I'm like, damn, that's the right and left brain hemispheres communicating. And then I was like, that's what these stroke rehabilitation centers and doctors were telling me. And this can happen with like $30 worth of mushrooms. I'll try that. So I didn't quite know how difficult it was going to be. But luckily I'm just, I'm a very just strong-willed individual. At that time, I was about 18 years deep into therapy. So I knew myself for sure. Not as intimately as I know myself now, but, and then, and I partook because I thought it could work. And, what happens with mushrooms, specifically just psilocybin mushrooms, is it exasperates what's at the forefront of your mind. So I went there thinking, these guys, they surprised me. First of all, I went there to get CBD genetics and thought I was going to start farming. And they're like, no, man, like, we're going to do this. I'm like, perfect. Let me grab an Uber. I'll grab a case of beer. I'll go grab the smokes and we'll do it. And they're like, no, man, like,
No.
that's not what this is. I'm like, okay. So then we fasted for 5 hours and we took down this matter, which was, extremely hard even just to digest. And immediately, everything that I thought I was, like, basically I was in this victim mindset, right? Where woe is me. And I was very much, that's the problem. What the fuck happened to me? And what, this is still happening. So I got to highlight it. And it was like, my body didn't want to let go, or my ego didn't, and my whole body was shaking. And I eventually started dry heaving pretty heavily, had to go outside and was just kind of screaming for a good hour, like, what is this? And why am I like this? And then the medicine started to kind of bring me around the farm, which was the first time I'd been there, only been there for about 6 hours. So I was lost. And then eventually on my like 18th fucking lap around this farm, I was like, this is what is happening in your life, man. You're fucking waking up and you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. And you can choose to just not fucking do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was just a huge aha.
Dude, it's so fucking crazy that like the answer sometimes is right in front of you, and sometimes you just need a fucking tool like a mushroom to bring it out and analyze it.
And it had to punch me in the face. Like I had to, that's why this works so well for, veterans, executives, athletes, just high operating thinking. And it works well for everybody else. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to subject it. I'm just talking in kind of my own experience, but I wanted to see that. Like, it's like, put me through the shit, right? So I can get out of this shit. And then for the last, so that happened for about 3 hours, and I was so exhausted and I was, all the while dry heaving, etc. And I went and lied down on the couch, and then everybody was trying to calm me down. They put 432 hertz music on, and then then it was beautiful. It was one of the guys said, this is why we wanted you to come here, man, because we want you on this team. And I said, me? Why me? I'm such a fucking loser. And he's like, no, man, like you're fucking, You're a special dude, and we love you. And then, the fucking, as soon as I heard the word love, everything like just opened up, and I went to a different space, and then it was pretty beautiful for about 40 minutes. And then I passed out because I think I was just so exhausted.
Yeah.
And then I woke up the next day and I describe it as feeling the way I should. I had a little bit of energy. I wanted to wake up. I didn't want to sleep in. I wanted to call my kids and see them. I wanted to get home to them, but I knew that the work wasn't done. I stayed on the farm for about a week. Um, and yeah, I went outside the second day on the farm, I think, or third day. I forgot my glasses, and it didn't trigger a headache. I'm like, whoa, the fuck is going on here? And then even on the FaceTime the next day, my wife's like, you sound completely fucking different. I'm like,
Because you
yeah,
were slurring before?
yeah, I was slurring. Yeah, heavy
Yeah.
slur. It wasn't there anymore. So like all those symptoms that I described, lessened in intensity, are all but faded away. And within a 2 week, I would say 2 week to 2 month period. Some took longer than others. And like I said, I knew nothing gets fixed in 5 hours. So we made a nice little low dose regimen with also some, CBD keef, which is, all my stuff that I take, food, etc., is minimally processed as possible. So we used the keef, all organically grown, no till, etc. So I started to learn about that. And yeah, 6 months after, I retested my brain and blood, came back with no abnormalities. And blood
Jeez.
work was completely clear. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? And so then I got involved with Decrim Nature, and we started, to advocate in Washington, D.C. with Initiative 81 with Melissa Lavasani, who's a part of the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition, who we've done 2 congressional briefings with. So she's trying to change the Congress's image and in education, et cetera, for the use of funding for veteran communities and others. And then I just thought, this is cool. Like, probably help 1,000 people, 10,000 people before I die. How do I make a medicine out of this? Because the FDA doesn't have an approved traumatic brain injury medicine, and we get prescribed Wellbutrin and all these things that smoked me. And so then I just, I waited 3 hours after a soap event in Pittsburgh for Rick Doblin. I told him my story, and he's like, give me your email. I'm going to connect you with some drug developers. I want you to talk to them, tell them your story, and I want you to do something with this. I'm like, okay. So then, I picked my team, put a team together, and communicated my story in a deck, and then raised money. And, a year and a half ago, March 11th, we spoke to the FDA. And this all happened within a, 2 year span. We've owned and operated clinics in the space. Like I said, I've done those 2 congressional briefings. I've offered my story and know how to measure 109, which is an adult therapeutic use program. It's the first state in Oregon that's open right now that you can fly to and legally in that state, not federally, but statewide, do psilocybin in a service clinic or a service center with a licensed facilitator that'll sit with you, with a manufacturer that's licensed, and a testing facility that will test the material that you're going to eat. So there's a rigorous kind of process, and it's all full spectrum, which is fucking amazing. Prop 122 is next, and yeah, man. And then I support the people that reciprocate to me, and if you follow me, I'm not 100% right, but I'm the people that I support, like I said, is just very small. Heroic Hearts Project, Jesse Gould from day one, and he'll be a forever type of friendship. Matthew Wisbuckley from No Fallen Heroes, Cody Chandra, who I met 4 years ago, Chandra Capital, and Jonathan Wilson from Invi Health. We're doing this Monster Mash event, and the veterans were doing 211 miles. But just those type of Melissa Lavasani Psychedelic Medicine Coalition. I'm sure there's others. Paul Austin's great from Third Wave. And then, grateful for everybody that was involved in starting WeSauna and Chad Bronstein, Aristotle, Loomis, like just, people that have helped support this journey, and it ain't over. There's so much more work to be done.
I like the way you speak about it though, because you're not coming from a place of like it's your product, so you want to sell it, and that's the only reason you're doing it. Like it works. Like I feel like you were the perfect person to be kind of showcasing this, just because of your fucking past, what has happened to you. You were on literally the razor's edge, about to leave Earth, and you found something, and it brought you back. It literally brought you back, which is a lot of people. I know you know this. A lot of people don't make it back. Like once they hit that point, I mean, dude, then you start taking pharmaceuticals, and you start having more side effects. The depressive thoughts come even harder. What's the point of living? I have nothing. Goodbye. Good night. You know? And
Yeah, I mean, you stare, like I said, I've always had these light and dark pieces that have always been a part of me. And sometimes the dark wins, and because I wanted it to, because I needed to. And that's no different right now today. Like Jordan Peterson says, like be a fucking monster and then learn how to control it.
I love that quote, dude. I
Fucking
fucking
great.
love that quote. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fucking great.
He's
It
brilliant.
doesn't. Yeah, he's fucking amazing. These types of ideas I think are really important, and I think they're important to communicate. And yeah, I was in a bad fucking way, but I also I knew, regardless of how I was planning, I don't think I ever would have, because I just had this inkling, and I've always kind of had this. I wanted to be a priest when I was younger. I was thinking about this the other day after
Whoa.
after the 300 miles. I know, right?
You're
But I
fucking
think
fighting everybody. You got to try to fight
uh,
those demons next.
I think it was more so about like finding a community.
Before hockey, you wanted to
Yeah.
be a
Oh, dude, I
priest?
was young. Yeah, man. I was like
Yeah.
fucking 7. Where
Oh,
I was like,
Jesus.
oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Where I was like, yeah, I was a Bible thumper. It was is what it is. So, but I don't know. I guess it's the question of more. Right? Like even when I was playing hockey, I'm like, fuck, is this really it? I'm fucking pushing a fucking rubber puck around, like, and I'm beating people. And this can't be it. And then
Do you think
even
that's
like
a common thought? The over analyzing
it
shit
gets,
like that? I do that too, a
yeah, it
lot.
gets to, yeah. I mean, dude, I overanalyze everything. Like, that's just how we are. We're allowed to think about thinking. We're the only beings that can do that. But we have, what is it? Close to 30,000, 50,000 thoughts a day. Like, that's a fucking. If you're
Jesus.
like me and you don't know how to quiet it down,
Yeah.
it could spin you out pretty quick.
Yeah.
So that's why I have all these tools. But always know it's going to get better. And then I also, and I'm going to have to wrap here soon just because I got to grab my kids. I also know in my heart that there's numerous ways to access the same thing or the same tool. And because this tool, one of them being mushrooms and psilocybin, can impact a life so positively, I do not shit on one way or the other. Meaning, I support decrim nature, regardless of how strong that community and those personalities are and how much they hate the pharmaceutical industry. I started a pharmaceutical company because I believe that some people are going to want to access this through a prescription and from a doctor. That's millions of people, and then I support Measure 109. I support Prop 122. I support these avenues to get full spectrum medicine because I think people are educated enough to know, no, I don't want the synthetic. I'll just go to Oregon or I'll go to, Colorado, and I'll partake there. And, people should have access to their own consciousness, right? Where the decrim comes in. So
Agreed.
I support them all, man. And I don't put them down. So.
Wonderful, man. Daniel Carcillo, thanks for popping by, dude. I had a blast, man. Listen, I'm gonna add your name to our sub list for men's league, and if you're ever in the Chicagoland, you just we got a jersey for you, buddy.
Let's go. All right.
Yo, dude, how can
Yeah,
people find you on social media and like with
yeah. So
businesses?
Daniel Carcillo 13 is Instagram. Carbon Boom 13 is Twitter, and just Daniel Carcillo everywhere else like LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah. Cool, man. I appreciate you doing this, brother. That was fun. You're a knowledgeable person, dude. And I'm so happy that you're with us and booming.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you having me, man.
All right. Take it easy. Everyone at home, thanks for listening. Peace.